My name is Stella Juma, and my story is one that still haunts me to this day. A story that began in the beautiful, quiet town of Mois Bridge, nestled in the Rift Valley of Kenya, where my life was full of the love of my parents, the warmth of our simple home, and the hopes of a bright future. Little did I know, the world I had known would shatter in an instant, changing everything I thought I knew about life, love, and survival. I was born to hardworking, kind-hearted parents who always made sure I had everything I needed: food, shelter, and most importantly, their love. I grew up in a home filled with laughter, the smell of my mother's cooking, and my father's steady, reassuring presence. As a child, I never questioned my future. I thought I would grow up, go to school, find a good job, and maybe even become a doctor one day. That was my dream. But when I was just 13, everything changed. My parents fell ill unexpectedly. It began as a fever, something we thought could be treated, but it quickly spiraled out of control. The disease took both of them in a matter of weeks, leaving me with nothing but grief, a hollow ache in my chest, and a world that seemed suddenly bleak. I remember the feeling of being alone, a child with no one left to care for her. The loss was so overwhelming that it felt as though the ground beneath me was crumbling away. With no family left in Mois Bridge to turn to, I was sent to live with distant relatives in a nearby town, Kitale. They took me in out of obligation, not love. I became the unpaid help in their home, cleaning, cooking, and doing all the chores. No one asked how I was feeling, no one cared. I was invisible. My world was reduced to the endless repetition of work, day after day, and the ever-growing emptiness in my heart. I wanted to escape, to be free, but I didn't know where to go. And then one day, Uncle Kizito, my mother's brother, came to visit. He lived in Nairobi, and when he heard of my parents' passing, he promised me that he could help me start a new life. He told me that he had connections in the city and that there were opportunities for someone like me to work and make a better life. He assured me that I would be safe and treated well in Nairobi. His words filled me with hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to escape the life of sorrow and loneliness I had come to know. Nairobi seemed like a distant dream, bright, bustling, full of opportunities. I was willing to believe in anything that would pull me out of the darkness. With nothing but a small suitcase and a heart full of desperate hope, I left my relative's home and followed my uncle to Nairobi. We traveled on the Eldoret Express bus, the long journey offering me a glimpse of the world beyond the small town I had always known. As we passed through Eldoret town, I looked out the window, my heart racing with anticipation. This was it, the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Little did I know that chapter would turn out to be a nightmare I would never wake from. When we arrived in Nairobi, the city overwhelmed me. The towering buildings, the constant rush of traffic, and the noise of the crowded streets were like nothing I had ever seen. But there was a sense of excitement, too. This was a place where dreams came true. I told myself that, despite the fear in my heart, everything would be all right. My uncle was here, and he promised me a better life. But things weren't as they seemed. At first, I stayed with Uncle Kizito in his apartment. It was a small, cramped space, but I was grateful to have a roof over my head. However, it didn't take long before I realized that Uncle Kizito wasn't as interested in taking care of me as he had promised. His wife, Aunt Wambui, barely spoke to me, and when she did, it was to give me orders to clean, cook, and work. I was expected to do everything in the house, but I was given nothing in return. No affection, no appreciation, just work. I began to feel like I was invisible again, as though my existence was nothing more than to serve others. One day, Aunt Wambui told me about a family that was looking for a house girl. She said they were wealthy, and that this would be a good opportunity for me. They would treat me well, she said, and I would be paid for my work. I didn't question it. I wanted to believe her. I thought this was the opportunity I had been waiting for. This family would change everything for me. I would be safe. I would be valued. Uncle Kizito took me to an office in Eastleigh, Nairobi. The office was large and professional-looking, with polished floors and shiny furniture. The men who greeted us were dressed in suits, their smiles warm and assuring. They told me I would be placed with a family that needed help around the house. They promised that I would be treated like part of the family, that I would have everything I needed, and that I would be well paid. "You're lucky," one of the men said, shaking my hand. "This family is wonderful. They will treat you with respect. We've placed many girls with them, and they've all had positive experiences." I believed him. I had to. I was desperate for this to be true. This was my ticket out of the life I had been living. But nothing was as it seemed. When I arrived at the family's house, I realized I had been deceived. The house was grand, but the people inside were cruel. The mother barely acknowledged me when I arrived, and the father did not even look up from his newspaper. Their children treated me with disdain, never once speaking to me unless it was to give me orders. I was expected to work from morning until night, doing everything for them: cooking, cleaning, washing clothes, and even caring for their children. There was no rest, no reprieve. The worst part, though, was the abuse. If I made the smallest mistake, I was punished. The mother would yell at me for hours, calling me useless, lazy, and worthless. Sometimes she would lock me in a dark room for hours with no food or water. They fed me scraps, just enough to keep me alive, but nothing more. The emotional and physical abuse was unbearable, and I couldn't escape. I was trapped in a life that wasn't my own, and the dreams I had once had of a better future seemed like a cruel joke. For months, I lived in torment. I had no friends, no family, no one to turn to. The city that I had thought would offer me a new beginning had become a prison, and I didn't know how to get out. But then everything changed. One day, while I was cleaning the kitchen, I met Amina. She was another maid who worked in the neighborhood, and she saw the pain in my eyes. She came to me one evening and whispered that she had once been in my shoes, that she had escaped from the same network of traffickers who had sold me into this life. She told me about Imani Safe House, a place where girls like me could go to find refuge, to heal, and to start over. Her words were like a beacon of hope. For the first time in months, I dared to believe that escape was possible. Amina promised to help me get to Imani Safe House, and with her guidance, I finally gathered the courage to run. We escaped in the middle of the night, slipping through the streets of Eastleigh, avoiding the family's watchful eyes. After what felt like an eternity, we finally arrived at Imani Safe House. The people there welcomed us with open arms, offering food, shelter, and the comfort I had longed for. They listened to our stories, offering us the kind of compassion and care I had never experienced before. But though I was safe, the scars of my past still haunted me. The memories of the abuse, the hunger, the loneliness, they stayed with me. It took time for me to heal, and even now, I carry those memories with me. But I also carry something else now: strength. Strength that I never knew I had. Strength that carried me through the darkest days. Today, I am Dr. Stella Juma, a neurosurgeon in South Africa. I never gave up on my dreams, and through everything I endured, I managed to rise above it all. My journey was long, and it was painful, but it has shaped me into who I am today. I will never forget where I came from, and I will never forget the girls who are still suffering. My story is not just mine. It is the story of every girl who has been sold, trafficked, and abused. I speak for them now because I know that they too can rise. They too can escape. This is my story, and it is just the beginning.